You picked a great day to join us, and we have a great lineup on tap for you. Hi, everybody. Thanks for making us a part of your day. Two very unusual candidates taking top honors in New Hampshire. No question about that, and a lot to chew on as the candidates and the media now rush from New England to the next states in the process. And we'll go in-depth on all of it in just a bit. But first, we welcome in former D.C. Police Chief Charles Ramsey. After leaving the district in 2007, he spent nearly a decade as police commissioner in Philadelphia. He's now advising Chicago Mayor Rahm Emanuel on the police chief search there. Chief Ramsey, welcome back.
Thank you. It's good to be back.
It is so great to have you, and I want to say at the outset, not only thank you for being here today, this is a great opportunity to kind of pull the camera back and look at policing in a big picture way and talk about the issues that local law enforcement, which is, you know, that is law enforcement, local law enforcement. I look forward to talking with you about all the issues that our officers deal with. But I want to thank you for having been back in the day like the first big guest to do this show on a regular basis. We would have people stop by when we were on at 4 o'clock opposite Oprah, and frankly no one watched. And it was hard to get good guests. And it was doubly hard to get people to commit to come in every month to talk about whatever was going on at the time. And you were like the first guy to ever say, yeah, I'll come in every month and we'll sit down at the ridiculous little table that we had, the little 2-inch table that we had, you know, and it was great. It really helped the show generate what I think is some momentum now. So I just wanted to thank you for having been there for us when we were not able always to attract the big name guests.
Well, good, and thank you. I always enjoy doing the show, so it's really good to be back here with you today.
You've been nearly half a century in police work.
Yeah.
And for folks who don't know, like, whatever happened to Charles Ramsey after he left D.C., you were the man in one of the nation's biggest cities. You spent 8 years as what they call commissioner in the city of Philadelphia.
Yeah, I spent 8 years in Philadelphia, the longest serving since they've had home rule there in Philadelphia. So it's hard to believe how much time has passed, but you know, 8 years has come and gone. I retired January 5th of this year. Again, I should say, because I retired. That is the third time I've retired from something, but eventually I'll get that down.
When you go to a new city and it's all new and you're the man, how do you acclimate yourself to all the people and all the issues and just how neighborhoods differ from one another and getting to know the force and the politics and all of that?
Well, my time in D.C. was invaluable when it came to going to D.C. because I came from Chicago when I came here. So I went through that process for the first time in D.C., listening, paying attention, doing a lot of reading, trying to really understand the culture of the organization, culture of the city, where the streets are located, where our crime pockets are, all those kinds of things. And I did the same thing when I went to Philadelphia. So my experience in D.C. actually helped me tremendously when I took over Philadelphia.
How long does it take to start to feel comfortable where if you know, you're the sort of guy when something happens you go there, you don't just dispatch a deputy, so to speak, and say, hey, call me when you get there and you know what's going on. You're the type of guy who goes. Well, when you're new, you know, you can't be like reading a map. It's not a good look for a chief to need a map to get to the scene where something terrible's happened. The expectations are, you know, where this street or that neighborhood is, and needless to say, a huge force, politics, community leaders, the rest of it. How soon until you get comfortable?
Well, I mean, for comfort, about 6 months or so before you really start to feel comfortable, both with your internal issues as well as external. It doesn't mean that you have a full grasp, but at least you're starting to get some level of comfort in terms of who your personnel are, their capabilities, where are your crime pockets, who are the community leaders, both formal and informal, that are out there. You still need a GPS, though, to find your way around.
I can imagine. Big city like Philadelphia, complex, and all the rest of it. Now you're advising Mayor Emanuel of Chicago. He's under the microscope, and he's hiring. The hire that he's about to do, I don't know how soon it'll be, but it's as high profile as they get. Who your police commissioner is and the process you go through if you're a mayor, that's all very big, and that's something that folks are watching him engage in.
Well, I'm working with several cities right now, and Chicago happens to be one of them. I'll be doing some advising in terms of their revision of their training policies, some of the crime-fighting strategies, things of that nature, not directly involved in the selection of the next police superintendent, although that's taking place now. And obviously, it's probably the most critical choice that any mayor can make, especially in a large city, is who they're going to have running their police department, because public safety is so important.
You would know who the people are who'd be out there, who'd be perfect. Is it a small universe of people who you would sort of stamp as A or A+ caliber for a job like being the top, I guess they call it superintendent there, being superintendent in the 3rd largest city in the nation?
Well, I mean, it all depends on what they're looking for. You have a small group of veteran police chiefs that are available depending on the location of the city and if it's the right fit. And then you've got some very talented people that are coming up into the chief's positions. The person that followed me in Philadelphia, for an example, Richard Ross, tremendously talented. When I left here, Kathy Lanier, who is the current chief here, very, very talented individual. So you've got a very, very nice group of very bright people.
If I'm hearing you right, you have folks who, what I'll call the deputy level, at the 2nd rung level, both in-house and outside.
Yeah, you do. And
phone lines open as we talk this Wednesday with former D.C. Police Chief Charles Ramsey. Many of you will remember the chief from his time here, and if you have a question or comment or just want to say hi to the chief, please grab this opportunity, grab an open line while we have them. Those of you watching in the 11 a.m. hour can join the conversation. As always, we hope you'll do so. We've posted the number to the bottom of the screen, as always, at 703-387-1020. To the phones we'll go as your questions and comments come in. Chief, let's dive right into what I hope will be the main focus of our conversation today. The challenge of policing in this Ferguson and post-Ferguson era, where the scrutiny is high. Some people feel like they can't get an honest, they can't get a fair shake from the criminal justice system generally, and where we're all walking around with the kinds of devices that can capture and disseminate video in the blink of an eye. Can you talk about how that has transformed modern policing?
Well, it's transformed policing a great deal. You mentioned earlier that I've been in policing almost half a century, 47 years. I've been in policing, and I've not seen a situation quite like this in that period of time. And again, video plays a big part of it in terms of people's opinion and attitude toward police. Now, there's always been tension in some communities. There's no question about that. Building trust and legitimacy is something that is essential for any police agency in order to be able to provide the kind of service we need to provide to our communities. But these viral videos have really taken hold and has really started to reshape the opinion that many people have of police. And it's very unfortunate because the majority of contacts police have with citizens, there's absolutely nothing wrong. It's done properly. There's absolutely no issue. But when you do have situations where the officer's actions are inappropriate, it may appear to be inappropriate, may not necessarily be. Obviously, that does drive public opinion, and that's very troubling for all of us across the United States.
To what extent, if at all, does this environment that we're in and the technology that virtually every citizen has, does it impact an individual officer's decision-making as he or she goes about her job on the beat on a daily basis?
Well, there's some concern about officers being a little reluctant to take action when they ought to take action. I don't think there's any data that really support that. I'm a huge proponent of body cameras, for an example, and I know that many departments, including this one, is moving toward the use of body cameras on officers. When you have citizens that are recording events, something happens to get your attention before you even turn the camera on. So you don't see it from start to finish necessarily. A body camera would give you the whole range of events that took place from start to finish, and you can make a better judgment as to whether or not the officer's actions were appropriate. I think video changes behavior. I don't have a problem with citizens videotaping police. I don't have a problem with police officers videotaping what they do. I think if we want to really establish that trust and transparency, and this is a key element of moving in that direction.
Do you worry that citizens who know what's going on in the community and perhaps have a concern about something that they're seeing might be reluctant to go up to an officer who's wearing a camera, because the last thing that person wants, that citizen who has an investment in the community, particular knowledge of what's going on a street, in an alley, near a school or whatever, you know, there's trust involved. Dealing with an officer, it's like, okay, you're probably not going to rat me out. I can deal with you if you're like most police. I don't have a problem. There's no risk. The camera, though, is it on? What happens to that video? Do I need to worry forever that our interaction is in the cloud?
Well, you raised one of the key issues when it comes to implementing this particular form of technology, and that is the impact it has on people's privacy in general. But certainly if you've got a person who wants to provide confidential information, they're going to be reluctant to do so if they're on camera. That's why it's important there be policy in place. When can an officer actually turn off a camera? If you have a juvenile sexual assault victim who has just been victimized, do you really want to capture that on tape before you've had someone, a mental health professional there to help walk that child through the trauma? Most of us don't particularly want to have the inside of our house on TV at night,
Sure.
Especially if you've called police in some kind of crisis or issues going on. So who's available to see these videos later on? I mean, technology has moved faster than policy and the law can keep pace with, and we're kind of all over the place. There are some cities that think that all these tapes should just be thrown out on TV. I personally disagree with that. I don't think it should just be looking at tape for the sake of looking at tape. But those are real privacy issues and concerns that departments and groups like the ACLU and communities are going to have to grapple with.
And so this is an opportunity for the policy people inside each shop to get caught up, and as they develop best practices, to then share them so that each agency isn't sort of reinventing the wheel.
Well, that's part of it, but I also think when we start working through this, we need to sit down with groups like the American Bar Association, with the ACLU, with stakeholders in community to help us carve out that policy, because it's important that we use technology, but we always do it within constitutional guidelines. And so today we're talking about body cameras, tomorrow is drones, tomorrow is some other form of technology that we haven't even thought of. I mean, everybody's in love with body cameras now, but what happens when software, facial recognition software, can be attached to that? And now a cop's just walking down the street and he's scanning the faces of everybody in the crowd. I'm not saying that's wrong, but we need to think these things through. Just because you can do something doesn't mean you should. And I think we have to be very careful, because technology is really changing the way we live and how we really define privacy and other issues that make us what we are as a society. Fascinating
to hear you talk about how all this technology is really impacting every aspect of our lives. Talking with former D.C. Police Chief, former Philly Police Commissioner Charles Ramsey. We'll take a break here. Back, though, with more right after this.